I am astounded by the number of Longhorn fans who don't believe that Sean Miller is a good hire.
Iowa basketball gets its guy. Ben McCollum is the new Iowa basketball coach.
The Pacers won a totally normal game with no chaos and no drama and no issues late.
Have the Orlando Magic found the consistency they're looking for? The first time in a long time, a 48-minute effort against a quality opponent.
But Anthony Davis has a reason that he wanted to come back and play this game against the Brooklyn Nets.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Cam Ward shines at his pro day.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast.
Cam Ward's pro day on Monday at the University of Miami. He was absolutely fantastic. And I have to say the disclaimer before we even get into anything here. A pro day, a good pro day, does not mean that you're going to be a good quarterback. I don't think that Cam Ward is going to be a good quarterback because he had a good pro day. I think he's going to be a good quarterback because of his tape. But having a good pro day and checking some boxes and doing some things that he'll have to do for the Titans that he didn't necessarily do a ton of in college, that was a good part of this process as well. Saw Cam Ward work on some things that he'll have to do when he is the Tennessee Titans quarterback. So a good pro day experience overall, but I got to talk about the Titans part of this. The Titans sent the house. Literally, if you played NCAA at any point in time in your life, 50 points, send the house. That's what the Titans did for this pro day experience with Cam Ward. The Titans contingent had dinner with Cam Ward on Sunday night. And then Monday, at the pro day, you had Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi, assistant general manager Dave Ziegler. You had Reggie McKenzie. You had Brian Callahan. You had Nick Holtz. You had quarterback coach Bo Hardigree. I mean, literally everybody for the Tennessee Titans went to this pro day for Cam Ward. Not only did the Tennessee Titans send executives, scouts, and coaches to see Cam Ward, the Titans' full media and social media team was present as well, filming. Folks, I come to you to say this before we talk about the ins and outs of the pro day. If you are someone who is going kicking and screaming into the Cam Ward era, I'm begging you now, with a month left, just let it go. Call the fight. It's over. Cam Ward is going to be your quarterback of the future. The Titans' entire media conglomerate was there. Why? Because they're filming the pro day experience. And when they draft Cam Ward #1 overall, they're going to have an awesome YouTube series about him becoming the pick. That's why the Titans' entire media, not just the coaches, scouts, and executives, went. I mean, Amy Adams Strunk basically put a sign up saying, we're taking Cam Ward. And if you still think that this is Mike Borgonzi playing some sort of game to get a trade, like, honestly, I think you're just holding on to a dying wish at this point. But with that being said, again, Cam Ward, excellent in his pro day. The Tennessee Titans were there to see it. Ward put a ton of work into his pro day. He was out there prepping 4 hours early. He's been working on the script that he wanted to show to NFL scouts since January. He didn't throw at the combine. He said, his quarterback coach said, he didn't throw at the combine because he wanted to put a spotlight on his teammates by throwing only at his pro day. So a guy who's going to endear himself to the locker room and cares about his teammates as much as himself. Some ins and outs that really stood out to me about Cam Ward's pro day. Number one, after one of Cam Ward's best throws, a rollout to his left, he threw the ball, and then he looked at Tennessee Titans general manager Mike Borgonzi and Tennessee Titans, what do we call it, czar of football, a president of football operations, if we want to be technical, Chad Brinker. And he had something to say to him. He said something to them. And they laughed, and they chuckled, and then Cam walked back and kept it going. But whatever that was, I hope one day we find out. I hope one day we find out. But Cam Ward, in some way or another, is letting them know, you don't want to pass on me, fellas. You don't want to pass on me, and I don't think they will. But outside of that, we wanted to see Cam Ward do some things, again, that he's going to have to do at the NFL level that he didn't do a lot of in the college level. Cam Ward was not under center very often in college. And look, that's not a Cam Ward complaint. That's college football. A lot of the things that you'll hear about college quarterbacks, about whether they can get into a third or fourth progression, about whether they can read defenses a certain way, about whether they can work under center, can they do play action and turn their back to the defense and then turn back around and get it done. Things that you have to do at the NFL level that you weren't really asked to do at the college level. Can Cam Ward do those? Well, he was able to work under center. We saw bootleg. We saw the deep and outside throws that he does need to work on. If you're going to be honest about Cam Ward and the evaluation of Cam Ward coming out of college, you have to say that deep throws outside the hashes are an area of weakness that he could improve upon. He threw some good passes in that realm. Incredible on posts and corners. Some of the corner routes that he threw, and then, of course, the double move where he's rolling to his left and Restrepo runs the double move down the left-hand sideline, and Cam Ward throws a 60-yard dot across his body. Again, a pro day throwing against air does not qualify you as the first overall pick. The tape qualifies you as the first overall pick. But having a good pro day just checks that box. And everything we saw from Cam Ward, lefty rollout, out and up, corner route, deep and outside, bootleg, under center, RPOs. He was throwing the ball with such velocity. Again, arm strength isn't just how far you can throw the football. Arm strength is the velocity at which you throw the football, because getting the ball inside the tighter windows at the NFL level will require a certain level of velocity that is necessary. Remember, Brian Callahan said there is a threshold on arm strength that you need at the NFL level, and that's just not distance, that's velocity. So keep that in mind. I am curious, like I said, about the stance. Cam Ward is a prominent right foot guy, and when you're under center, it's hard to have one foot far out in front of the other like you would during shotgun. So will the Titans adjust that stance at all? Will they move that right foot back to center a little bit when he's under center? I'll be interested. That's just a nerdy thing that, us diehards are going to be paying attention to going forward, is Cam Ward's stance and his feet and all that. Very interested. But again, the pro day doesn't make you the first overall pick, but I think it can check a good box. And I think it checked a good box for Cam Ward. He operated perfectly. He added in some things that you wanted to see growth-wise, and the Titans clearly sent the house to see Cam Ward, proving again that I think called the fight. Cam Ward is the number one pick.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The tournament games happening almost every day. Women's tournaments, men's tournaments. It's all happening. There's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can check out some NBA lines, the interconference matchup in Detroit tonight. How about that? Pistons host the Spurs. Cade Cunningham and crew have been looking pretty good this season. They're favored against the Spurs. FanDuel has the Pistons laying 8.5. It's not the real Spurs, but you got to play who you play. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
I am astounded by the number of Longhorn fans who don't believe that Sean Miller is a good hire.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
I said yesterday that it felt like the initial reaction amongst Texas fans was whelmed. It didn't feel like people were overwhelmed with joy and excitement. And it didn't feel like people were underwhelmed with pain and misery. But the more that I've looked on message boards, on social media, on text conversations that I've had with friends who are Longhorn fans, the more I feel a sense of general disappointment with the hire. And I don't want to generalize here, right? I'm sure some of y'all out there are very excited about this hire. But again, it feels like the masses not super thrilled with the Sean Miller decision. I think I know why that is, and I don't agree with you. Now, look, if you were holding out hope that Jay Wright or Tony Bennett was going to come out of retirement to take this gig, or if you thought that Texas was going to be able to lure Bill Self away from Kansas, then I can't help you change your mind because Sean Miller isn't on the level of any of those guys. But how realistic were any of those guys? I mean, Jay Wright and Tony Bennett are done. I think they've been adamant about that for years now. And Bill Self has a lifetime contract at Kansas. He wasn't leaving that job for this one. If you thought, hey, maybe Billy Donovan, who has turned down dozens of college coaching jobs since leaving for the NBA a decade ago, if you thought he was going to quit an NBA job mid-season, basically preventing him from ever getting another NBA job in the future to come to Texas, I can't help you here as well. Again, I would have loved any of those names. I'm not here to argue that Sean Miller is a better option than those guys because we're talking about Hall of Famers. We're talking about national championship winners. We're talking about the creme de la creme of college basketball coaches in the 21st century. But those were all pipe dreams. Talking about the realistic candidates here and why Sean Miller is a great option compared to some of the other names that Longhorn fans have been throwing around since the Longhorns lost in the first four to Xavier last week. There are two things that I believe the general public really values when it comes to a new coaching hire. We are a very what have you done for me lately society, right? If you had told any Texas fan that Sean Miller was going to take over the Longhorns in 2018, they would have been pumped because Sean Miller had just completed a stretch of 5 conference championships, 3 Elite Eights, 5 Sweet 16s, and 7 tournament appearances in an 8-year span. That's a pretty damn good run. This guy was regarded as one of the very best coaches in the sport at that time. But again, that was a while ago. Since 2018, Sean Miller has been linked to that huge FBI investigation that marred college basketball. He lost his job at Arizona. He had to sit out for a year. He went back to Xavier, and he just hasn't had the same success. 0 conference titles, 0 Elite Eights, just 1 trip to the Sweet 16 for Sean Miller in his last 6 years as a head coach. So you look at some of the other candidates, again, that were being discussed. Grant McCasland, that guy's still coaching this year. He's got Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, who replaced Sean Miller. He's got Arizona in the Sweet 16. He's still coaching. TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State just got bounced yesterday, but the last couple of years, look, Iowa State was a 2 seed last season. They made it to the Sweet 16. They were a 3 seed this season and got bounced in the round of 32, which was obviously 1 round further than Sean Miller went with his Xavier team. So those guys are all being talked about a lot more because of what they've done lately. Here's where I defend Sean Miller. None of those 3, McCasland, Lloyd, Otzelberger, have the resume that Sean Miller has. In his career, Sean Miller has won 8 regular season conference crowns, 5 at Arizona, 3 at Xavier. He's won 4 conference tournament titles. He's been to the Sweet 16 8 times, and he's been to the Elite Eight 4 times. He's done all of those things in 20 years as a Division I college basketball coach. If you take those other 3 names, McCasland, Otzelberger, and Lloyd, and you combine all of their resumes, they've won 6 regular season conference titles, only 2 of them in a major conference, by the way. They've won 5 conference tournament titles, only 2 of them in a major conference. They've been to 5 total Sweet 16s. They've been to 0 Elite Eights in 21 years as Division I college basketball coaches. Again, I'm not just picking and choosing random stats. I'm not doing 1 versus 1 here. I'm doing Sean Miller versus all 3 of those guys combined. Sean Miller has more conference titles. He's got more second weekend trips. He's been to 4 Elite Eights when those other 3 coaches have yet to reach 1. So this is not to dunk on those 3 guys. I would have been happy if any of them replaced Rodney Terry here in Austin. But the sense that I'm getting from a lot of Longhorn fans is that they would have strongly preferred any of those guys over Miller. It doesn't care if it's McCasland, Lloyd, or Otzelberger. Just give me one of those 3 over this guy. Again, I think they would have been great, but it feels like people think Sean Miller is just and all three of those guys are a hell of a lot better, when in reality, Miller has done more than all three of those names combined. And I also think that people just want the rising star, right? They want the next big thing. They want the up and comer. That's kind of what Chris Beard was when he got this gig in Austin. Think about all those movies and TV shows where the aging actor loses his job to the next big thing, the young star. You see it in sports all the time, too, where the veteran player gets phased out for the younger, flashier guy who can sell some new jerseys and put more butts in seats. That's what Otzelberger would have been. That's what Tommy Lloyd would have been. That's what McCaslin would have been. The rising stars on their way up, ready for their first shot at the big time. Sean Miller isn't that. Sean Miller was that guy when he took over the Arizona job about a decade and a half ago. But now at the age of 56, he's not that, especially following his dismissal at Arizona and these last few seasons at Xavier. He's not regarded as the big, flashy name anymore. It's not a lot of sexiness involved with the Sean Miller hire. But once again, you go back to what he's done. If you hired any of those other guys, you're hoping that they were going to be able to have success at a high major job like the University of Texas. Sean Miller's already proven that he can have success in a very good conference, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 years. Like, McCaslin's been at Texas Tech for 2 years. Otzelberger's been at Iowa State for 4 years. Tommy Lloyd, I think 4 years at Arizona. Sean Miller, for more than a decade, was able to prove that he could be consistent both in the regular season and in the month of March as well. I know Sean Miller's never been to a Final Four. I get that. That's the biggest indictment against the otherwise very impressive resume of Sean Miller. I got to come up with a different word besides resume. I feel like I've said that too much. If you've turned this into a drinking game every time I've said that, you're probably hammered right now. I apologize for that. But I get that. He's never been to a Final Four. His tournament record is still very good. He's 22-13. If you look at the analytics, there's a stat called wins above expected in terms of how many tournament wins you're supposed to have each year versus how many tournament wins you actually have each year. Sean Miller is one of the best coaches. He's top 10 in America over the last 2 decades in that category. He has been a very, very good tournament coach despite not having made it to a Final Four. So to me, there's less risk involved with a Sean Miller hire than there would have been with any of those 3 guys. And then you look at a guy like Royale Ivey, who a lot of Texas fans were clamoring for. No shot at Royale Ivey, a fan favorite, part of the 03 Final Four team. You'd have had a lot of people excited with the potential of Ivey here in Austin. That guy's never been a college basketball coach, never been an assistant, let alone a head coach. You would have been hoping that he could figure it out. Same thing with a guy like Kellen Sampson, not Kelvin Sampson, but Kellen Sampson, who's the son of Kelvin, who's the lead assistant down at Houston. Like, some Texas fans were talking about him as well. You would have been hoping that that guy could come to Texas and be a very good high major college basketball coach. With Sean Miller, you don't have to hope. You've already seen him do it. You already know what he's capable of at a place where, honestly, basketball is a bigger deal at Arizona than it is at Texas. And he was able to handle that pressure and have a bunch of success at the University of Arizona, obviously before the FBI investigation kind of caused things to fall apart right there. But I like the Sean Miller hire. I think I said this stat yesterday. I'll say it one more time to wrap up this segment. Miller spent 12 years at Arizona. 8 of those 12 seasons were single-digit loss seasons. Texas has only had 4 single-digit loss seasons in the last 2 decades. That spans the latter stages of the Rick Barnes era. That spans Shaka Smart and Chris Beard and Rodney Terry. Sean Miller's the real deal. He's not the flashy, up-and-comer, rising star name anymore, but he's proven, and there's a reason why Chris Del Conte has had his eye on this guy for a couple of seasons. I'm a big fan of this move.
Iowa basketball gets its guy. Ben McCollum is the new Iowa basketball coach.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes.
The Iowa men's basketball team has hired their new head coach. It is Ben McCollum, as we've been talking about throughout the last week now, after Darren DeVries made the decision to take the Indiana job. This was something that I think a lot of people anticipated. A lot of different arrows were pointing that direction, and here we are. So we're going to break things down, talk about roster construction, coaching staff construction, how we think things are going to look in that front, what I was going to be able to do, some of the financial components to this. And yes, the portal is open. It is an important time, and Beth Getz got it done in time to make this, I think, very fruitful for Iowa. But we'll talk about all of that. Later this afternoon, the Iowa women are in action against Oklahoma with a shot to move on to the Sweet 16. We'll talk about that matchup. Huge weekend on the diamond as well. The baseball team with a sweep against Ohio State. And how about the Iowa softball team? Down 2 coaches, a lot of wild, wacky things happening inside that program. And now this be top 5 UCLA. How about that? We'll talk a little diamond. Plus, the weekend that was in wrestling, as we talked to you before, the championship matches, 1 out of 3 in those final matches, but Stephen Buchanan wins gold, and certainly a great story there. So we got a lot to get into here today, but we open at the forefront of things, and it is the big news. Ben McCollum, the new Iowa head coach, and talk a little bit about him. So if you missed our podcast from the last week, we're with you every single day throughout the course of the week talking Hawkeyes. But if you did, just the background of Ben McCollum and getting to see him now firsthand, close to action throughout the course of this season. I'm located in Des Moines, live in Des Moines, and seeing what he was able to do with this Drake program. So if we go back to the end of January, when things were starting to fall apart for Iowa basketball, and I put out my first hot board, and in a way, it was a little flippant, right? It was kind of, I was not pleased after that performance out in LA. Let's just put it that way. And that's when I put it. And then they followed up with the loss to Minnesota. We knew it was trending. And it trended where I thought it was. Ray McCaffrey was going to be let go. But when I put together that list, Darren DeVries was at the top of it. DeVries was the guy, made a ton of sense. Local connections, building a brand, doing what he did at Drake, all the things that make a whole lot of sense we got into. McCollum was a little bit further down. I think my list wasn't in order, but I think I had Ben McCollum 4th at that time. Drake, of course, was out to an outstanding part. But the reason, at least initially, I was pretty tepid on Ben McCollum was very simply, they're playing incredibly slow. And that slow pace, after what we saw under Todd Licklider, I knew it was going to be difficult for the fan base to maybe jump aboard right away. Dive into the pool head first. We weren't going to be able to do that after what we watched during those 3 seasons. But it wasn't just the style of play. I mean, that wasn't alone in the problem that Todd Licklider had at Iowa. He was socially awkward. He was not a good recruiter. He didn't connect with the fan base. I mean, there's a long list, and that's just the start of it, of the reasons that he didn't get it done at Iowa. Slow pace was one of them, but not the only one. And I think we have to remember that. When you look at Ben McCollum and digging in and learning more about him, talking to more people that he's been connected to, this guy, he's a butt kicker. And he is a basketball savant. He knows the game incredibly well. He knows it at a high level. Those are all great things. But then to be able to teach it. And if you were just watching this weekend for the first time, if you watched Thursday night, the win against Missouri, even Saturday when they were just outmanned against Texas Tech, and with a couple of breaks or maybe a couple of different calls, that game could have been different. You watch the way that team plays, and you see, starting with the point guard, and that's something that he is elite at, getting point guards to play at a high level. And you watch Bennett Sturts and just think, well, does this translate? Yeah, it's going to translate to the Big Ten. You watch the way that this group of guys, not the most athletic team, not a team that's going to wow you with athleticism, how they play so connected on both ends of the floor, how they're running their system. They're doing the things. It is ball movement. It is cuts. It is movement on the offensive end. Yes, it's limited possessions, but also the reason that they played with limited possessions this year is because they had to. They weren't deep. And also remember, when he put together this roster at Drake, he didn't get the job early in the process. They were going through a run in the D2 playoffs. And because of that, he was already behind the 8 ball, coupled with Drake does not have the financial resources, certainly of an Iowa. Even at the mid-major level, Drake is not at the top of the heap financially when it comes to NIL, when you're talking about that next tier guy. And he was able to build a roster, helped by 4 guys from Northwest Missouri State, but also going out, bringing in a couple guys from Wyoming. Went to Indiana State for a player. They were able to cobble together a roster without a whole lot of depth, but was able to do what they did. Reaching the round of 32, getting a win outside of the first 4 for the first time since 1971 at Drake. Doing something that Darren DeVries couldn't do at Drake. Win a game in the round of 64. Ben McCollum was able to do that in year number 1. His past offenses played at a quicker pace, but he is a coach. He is a coach that is going to work with the style of play that makes the most sense for his team. He's not going to try to put a round hole into a square peg. That's not who he is as a coach. Yes, there are basic tenets of what he wants to do and what they're going to do on both ends of the floor. But I think what should excite all Hawkeye fans, after what we've watched over the last, well, honestly, over the last 40 years, 39, Dr. Tom, you did it. I know you did. And I know there's some people that Dr. Tom Davis is a beloved figure. And watching that 2-3 zone, that flat 2-3, and seeing teams shoot three-pointer after three, it drove you nuts. And then obviously what we saw here recently on the defensive end of the floor with Fran McCaffrey, outside of the last 2 years with Adam Woodbury in the middle, this team is just brutal on the defensive end. They didn't put in the work. That is not going to be the problem here. Work will be done on the defensive end. You're going to see a team that is going to be connected. They're going to be easy to cheer for. And yeah, we might not be cheering for quite as many of those games in the 80s and 90s, but we're going to see defense. We're going to get defensive stops. We're going to have shot clock violations. You're going to see a team defensively that is so different.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The tournament games happening almost every day. Women's tournaments, men's tournaments, it's all happening. There's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can check out some NBA lines, the interconference matchup in Detroit tonight. How about that? Pistons host the Spurs. Cade Cunningham and crew have been looking pretty good this season. They're favored against the Spurs. FanDuel has the Pistons laying 8.5. You know, it's not the real Spurs, but that's, you got to play who you play. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The Pacers won a totally normal game with no chaos and no drama and no issues late.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
We start with Pacers Wolves, where the Pacers won handily by 16 points, 119-103. And they were up 22 at the end of the third quarter. And then everybody saw it happen. Quick 9-0 Wolves run. I turned to Dustin O'Perick. I said, here we go. No, mature Pacers in this one. TJ McConnell with 4 quick points. And that basically put the game away. The Pacers were never close or afraid ever again. I could never be a head coach. I would have taken out the bench at that time. McConnell came in and immediately steadied the ship with 2 very important shots. Credit to him. Credit to Rick Carlisle for that decision to stick with the bench there. The story of this game to me was how good Tyrese Haliburton was. I think Obi Toppin was farther above expectation than any other player, but Haliburton had speed in this game, and this is the second straight game where I've noticed that in a way that made me go, oh boy. He might be rounding into some form again, right? When he came back from the first injury, the hip thing, he was just like good to okay. That's a very harsh thing to say about someone who had 2 double-doubles with assists. He was quite good, but like compared to what he was showing post-All-Star break, it felt like not quite that. It has felt like that to me recently. The moment I knew this game was going to feature good Tyrese Haliburton was in the first half. He was running in transition up the floor with the ball and was going so fast that Jaden McDaniels was chasing him and fell down, leaning forward, trying to run as fast as he could to keep up with Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton was dribbling and handling the ball, and in the open floor dead sprint, Jaden McDaniels couldn't catch him. There were a couple moments of this game where Haliburton's speed was just on display. Over half his shots from 2. Longtime listeners know my obsession with the random Tyrese Haliburton 2-point shot stats, but when he takes majority 2s over 3s, that says a lot about the speed and agility that he has, the ability to get by guys, the ability to get to the floater or the rim or whatever spot it is on the floor. That moment early was a big part of that. He could get by guys. 7 threes, he made 3 of them. That's obviously going to lead to a floor of a decent game. 9 twos, and he made 6 of them. That's going to create a ceiling of a great game, and he made all 3 of his free throws. 24 points for Tyrese Haliburton in 29 minutes. The third quarter was particularly exceptional. 5 of his 7 makes came in that 5 makes came in that quarter on just 7 shots, 3 assists, 13 points in that quarter. Over half of what the Timberwolves scored in the third just came from Tyrese Halliburton. Only 11 points in the other 3 quarters combined, but that really stood out as a strong period where he was really cooking. And of course, the assists were fantastic again, 11 for him in this game of the Pacers' 30. I thought the Pacers' ball movement in this game was good. In general, that always starts with Tyrese Halliburton. So not like oh my gosh, wow, he had 24 and 11. Like it's amazing that's like almost pedestrian for him post All-Star break. Only 1 turnover as well. Agony from Tyrese Halliburton after his turnover. Agony as he threw it to Andrew Nembhard. They both made the same read on what was happening, but Nembhard kind of curled towards the rim, and I don't think Halliburton expected him to do that. He kind of just threw it out of bounds. His assisted turnover ratio is just crazy. So a terrific stat line, and this continues his absurd post All-Star break stat run, right? This is, I believe, so they played Memphis the game after the All-Star break the Pacers did. Tyrese Halliburton, he blew it that day. Blew it, I say in jest. 22 points and 9 assists. So what was he thinking? Get 1 more assist, Tyrese Halliburton. They won that game by 14. Since then, every game he's played has been a double-double. 11 games. They're 8-3 in the 11 games. The 3 losses were the Milwaukee game where the bench tripped all over themselves, the Denver game where the Nuggets were just better, and the Miami game where both teams could not miss a 3 to save their lives. Regardless, they're 8-3 in that stretch. Entering this game that they just played against the Wolves, in that 10-game stretch, he was averaging 21.3 points and 12.2 assists per game. Post-Memphis. If you include Memphis, it's a little lower than that. So he actually lowered his assist average post-All-Star break with an 11-assist game. That's insane. That's so nuts. 24 points does boost his scoring average. His shooting splits in that stretch are tremendous. Entering today, it was 54.7 from the field, and because of 61.8% on 2s, 47.8% from 3. That's not going to last, although it could stay high, and 93.8% at the foul line. So yes, it's a 50-40-90 in the old method, and in the new method that I like to call the Shane Young method that I agree with, it's 62-48-94 entering this game. Insane, efficient once again. Tonight, the Wolves just couldn't stop him, right? And the Pacers are so good when that happens. They can run their bench out and play even, and it doesn't feel good, but the bench was about even in this game, plus minus says so. And then they just win because their starters are better, because Tyrese Halliburton's on the floor giving them good shots for everybody, right? When he has 11 assists and he's drawing this much attention, he led the team in shots. He was tied with Siakam. I should say, like, it's really hard to guard the Pacers. And the Wolves trying to mix in some sorts of weird coverages. They didn't do quite the Nets zany trap and then not trap and then trap again stuff, but they're trying to make him think and work, and it didn't work. And the other part of this was the Wolves' transition defense was awful, and Halliburton just punished them in the open floor in this game. The Wolves didn't match up or didn't want to run, or what, for whatever reason, they didn't play well. And in these kind of games, when Halliburton feasts, everybody feasts, at least guys who are available for catch and shoot opportunities. Aaron Nesmith, 17 points on 9 shots, hitting all 3 of his threes. He continues to play very well since the All-Star break. I haven't looked this up, but I believe he's over 15 points a game since the break. He's been very efficient. I don't want to get too much into Aaron Nesmith right this second, but a big part of his growth is being healthier, and a big part of that working for the Pacers is him and Tyrese Halliburton have just been awesome on the floor of late. A lot of bench guys had good scoring nights. Obviously, will be top, and hitting 6 threes is a big part of that. Ben Mathurin, TJ McConnell in double digits. Siakam had like the quietest 14 points of all time, right? Everybody can feast or play better when Halliburton has nights like this. And this streak of 11 straight post All-Star has been nuts. If only had one more against Memphis, it would be like the cleanest cut ever for describing all this. Tyrese Halliburton's very good. The Wolves specifically were not interested in playing transition defense very well today. That makes for him having a great night, and he did. He ran it down their throats and punished them, and this streak can continue, right? Especially if he keeps shooting this well. He's making the game look very easy when he is this fast, and he's able to get to the rim and draw this kind of attention and do it all in under 30 minutes of play. Really phenomenal game from Tyrese Halliburton. I thought he set the pace for the game and got the Pacers going in a way that was effective. And then in the third quarter, he needed to score, and he did. And he took the most predictable Tyrese Halliburton heat check of all time, and he missed it. And then he settled in and was great the rest of the game. And they brought him in when they needed someone to steady the ship, and he did just that in the fourth quarter after it got a little hairier, albeit not actually hairy. What did the Wolves do to him? Did they like steal his lunch money? Did they give him a swirly? Like what does Obi Toppin have against the Wolves? Last week, 7 threes, a career high, coming against Minnesota, the best game of his Pacers tenure, 34 points, the game winner in overtime, just a magnificent game. This time, 6 for 9 from the field, made his only 2-pointer, so 7 for 10 in total on his way to 20 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. The best bench player the Pacers had. They could play him with Siakam. They could play him in small ball groups. They could play him with the starters. They could play him with the bench. Toppin was good no matter what the group was because the shot was falling again. Sometimes it's that simple, and it was for Obi Toppin in this game. It's kind of boring to break down a game like this. I said the same thing when Miles Turner went crazy in Detroit and when Aaron Nesmith had his previous career high of 27, which he now beat with 30. Like in those games and in this one from Toppin, they just made the threes. That's good, right? That's a good night. That's a good performance is to make your threes. But the specifics of this one are sometimes how I feel about Siakam, which is the Wolves don't really have a good cover for Obi Toppin, right? Looking at their second unit, it's not just straight up like second unit play second unit, obviously. But DiVincenzo, Nasri, Nick Alexander-Walker, Jalen Clark, good players, but not a ton of size, like a lot of 6'5s in there, and then a center. And so they're reliant on either their starters, McDaniels and Randall, to be defending any 4 on the floor at all times, or they're giving up size, or they're giving up speed in the matchup with Obi Toppin. And that's a lot of games like this. He always does this against Philly, it feels like to me. Philly's never had the perfect answer for him too, where that kind of game, he can just really impact things by speeding things up, by spacing the floor, by doing something of note. And in this one, it was that, and it was making six 3-point shots, which does a lot to help you win a game. The Wolves only made 9 as a team. Terrific game from Toppin, particularly shooting. He always, as he does, credits the Pacers guards and their system for making this possible. I've made the case for forever that he fits on the Pacers better than he would fit any other team in the league. And that remains the case to me in this game, though. He got open. He took the threes and he drilled them. One of them, he turned really far on the catch. He was facing like the sideline and turned and shot it. That's hard to do. That's a tough shot. He deserves a lot of credit for being able to do that and hit those in this game. Here's my crazy Obi Toppin stat for you. Obi Toppin has made now, after this game, 93s this season. 93s. He's made 13 of them just against Minnesota. 14.4% of every 3-point shot Obi Toppin has made this season has come against one team. Nearly 1/6 of his threes made the whole season came in 2 out of 70 games. That's crazy. That is crazy. 2 heaters against one team. I don't know what the Wolves did to deserve this, but Obi Toppin said, no. We're going to beat you guys. We're going to beat you guys twice. He was great again. The shooting, very important for the Pacers as they won this one. Great again from Obi Toppin. Also great, even though the stat line is very pedestrian, Andrew Nembhard was awesome. 3 for 7 for 6 points, and no one's going to lead with this guy. 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 2 steals. Those are fine numbers, nothing crazy. 2 turnovers, okay. Why was he so good? Because he was great on Ant. Great on Anthony Edwards. To be clear, before you rush to comment and say, you idiot, you overlooked this. I walked right up to Anthony Edwards while he was warming up. I was about 3 feet away, and I took a picture so I could see the wrap on his thumb. It was significant, right? He has a lacerated thumb. He was a game-time decision. He did play. Certainly, he's impacted by something like that on his shooting hand. No doubt. However, I also watched the game and can tell you that Andrew Nembhard did a good job defending Ant. Ant, 1 for 11 on threes, was a little resistant to really pound it and go inside with Nembhard on him, so he settled for the jumpers that he couldn't make. But he did get inside. He did pretty well. He was 6 for 8 on twos, but he wasn't drawing a ton of fouls. He wasn't having the same usual 3-level scoring impact because he was limited on how much he could do. And Andrew Nembhard did a great job of containing him, keeping him away from the basket, not letting him get eager to drive or be powerful in the lane. 17 points on 19 shots for Ant, even with the injury. That's a remarkable defensive game. And only 4 assists to 3 turnovers. Even with the caveats mentioned, a terrific game from Andrew Nembhard in that way. That's what they needed him to do well, and he did it, and that's why he was plus 19. That's the second best on the Pacers, right? He played the most minutes of any Pacer in this game because his defense was so important, right? He got a lot of this comment after the game. All defense. He should be all defense. And I would agree that per minute, per game, per whatever, Andrew Nembhard's been probably a top 10 defender in the league this year. Unfortunately, he's not going to reach the games. He's not going to get to 75 games because too many of his games won't count. He didn't reach the minutes in them. I think the max he can hit is 63. So while as an individual, if you just lined everybody out from best to worst, he might be a defense level guy. He cannot actually get an all defensive team spot this year. However, he was awesome in this game, particularly because of his defense. And then the Wolves didn't have anybody to step up who could match it. Like only 9 points from Julius Randle. Jaden McDaniels had some nice shots against the Pacers the first time. That didn't happen this time. Gobert had 16 points on 8 makes, but a lot of those were possessions where he was scooping up his own misses. And nobody else was really warm except for Naz Reid. He played pretty well on offense, but not very well on the defensive end. And there was a lot for the Wolves to overcome, right? They didn't have anybody really playing well on both ends or being so forceful that the Pacers had to respond or change their game plan to hang with that one player. And so 3 guys, Halliburton, Toppin, and Nembhard, all having an exceptional and obvious impact was enough for the Pacers to win. They were all quite good.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The tournament games happening almost every day. Women's tournaments, men's tournaments. It's all happening. There's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can check out some NBA lines. The interconference matchup in Detroit tonight. How about that? Pistons host the Spurs. Cade Cunningham and crew have been looking pretty good this season. They're favored against the Spurs. FanDuel has the Pistons laying 8.5. You know, it's not the real Spurs, but you got to play who you play. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
Have the Orlando Magic found the consistency they're looking for? For the first time in a long time, a 48-minute effort against a quality opponent.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast.
It has been a rough season. Everybody can see it. Everybody can feel it. This is not how things were supposed to go. 34-38 was not the follow-up to last year's breakthrough. And frankly, looking at the talent and looking at the ability level of the Magic's top 2 players specifically, but of the team as a whole, the frustration of this season is baked into the fact we know this team can play better. Say what you want, say, oh, maybe they overachieved last year, or, these are all things we got to consider. But we know this team can play better. The Magic promised to play to a higher standard, to play to a different level, to be a better team. And yes, they have fallen woefully short. And yes, we will go over all this in the offseason. We'll talk about how to make this team better and all that jazz very, very soon. Within the next month, 2 months, for sure. The question, though, is how do the Magic reclaim themselves? How do the Magic make the most of these final 10 games now remaining in the season? How do the Magic show us that what we saw for a good chunk of this year isn't who they are, isn't what they're about, and that what we've seen is the mirage, and what we believe they can be is the truth? The Orlando Magic, and look, it's never going to get to that level. Let's be clear. There's more evidence to suggest they are the 34-38 team they are this year than they were the 47 team they were last year. This year's group is flawed, dangerously flawed, and they've earned the record that they have. That does not mean we cannot expect more from them. That doesn't mean the Magic don't expect more of themselves. That doesn't mean that they're not capable of doing what they did Monday night against the Los Angeles Lakers. That does not mean the Magic can't take that important step, can't be that team. And when they have games like they had Monday night, it shows us what's still possible. It shows us what this team can do. And the question is always becomes, can they do it again and again and again and again? The signs are pointing to that they are figuring it out. They had a strong effort against the Washington Wizards, took care of their business, won that game. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road just a week ago to start their little tailspin. The Magic know they can beat anybody. The question every night is whether they will play that way, whether they will play with that intensity, that focus, that attention to detail. And the Magic at points Monday night didn't have that. Let's be clear. They gave up 30 points in the first quarter, another 30 points in the second. They had to fight and scratch and claw against the defense, loading up against their two best players and begging for somebody else to beat them. They fouled for 21 free throws in the first half, put themselves in a hole, gave up offensive rebounds, 14 second chance points on 7 offensive rebounds. They struggled to take advantage of opportunities. They looked like the Magic that we have grown frustrated with all season. And the Lakers started to pull away at the end of the first half. But unlike games like the Rockets or other games where the Magic have lost these kinds of games, Orlando reeled it in. They refocused. They locked back in. They made sure they weren't going to lose. And coming out of the locker room, and the Magic have lost so many games this year, Orlando took it to the metal. They put their foot on the pedal, and they raced past the Lakers. A 34-18 third quarter that included 5 of 9 shooting from 3. Defense that only allowed 7 free throw attempts in the second half. A fourth quarter defensive effort where, the Lakers still got 28 points, but couldn't get closer than 7 or 8 points in the deficit. The Magic finally put together the kind of effort that wins these kind of games. A strong defensive showing. An offense that moved the ball, that made the Lakers pay for loading up the paint. A faster-paced offense that got downhill and got transition points, that made the Lakers pay for poor shot choices and turnovers. The Magic got back to being who they are. The tougher, grittier, more defensive team, and an offensive team that took advantage of their opportunities. An offensive team that was aggressive, that wasn't afraid, that, yes, hit threes. The Magic got back to their standard. They got back to who they are. And that's all the Magic can ask for. That's all they can be. That's all that ultimately matters. Because whether you want to believe it or not, maybe you don't, maybe you do, that Magic team that we believe they could be at the start of the season is still in there. That Magic team from November and December that shocked the league with their effort, energy, intensity, even without Jalen Suggs and Mo Wagner, is still in there. The Magic know they can still be the best version of themselves. And so, yes, a lot of things went right, and especially Paolo and Franz. We'll talk about their games coming up here in a minute. A lot of things went right. But the Magic made a lot of things go right. They made the Lakers play Orlando Magic basketball. And that's all it takes sometimes. The Magic feasted on a porous defense and locked down and locked in to get probably the biggest home win since December. To get the Magic's first 2-game win streak since in a month, in more than a month. And now the Magic face the next challenge. The biggest challenge. To do it again. To be consistent. To bring the same effort, energy, intensity, no matter what, to execute at the same level, to play Orlando Magic basketball. Follow their formula to a win. And that challenge comes right away. Tuesday night in Charlotte. The Magic have their work cut out for them, obviously. But a win there makes it a 3-game win streak. And the Magic haven't had one of those since November. Since the second 6-game win streak back at the beginning of the season. Maybe the Magic are starting to play their best basketball. We've seen the 3-point shooting turn in their favor. They're playing with more confidence and pace. Paolo and Franz are superstars. And we'll talk about their games again in a minute. Maybe the Magic are getting back to being who they are. to being who we know they can be. And if that's the case, then the Magic become a much more dangerous team.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The tournament games happening almost every day. Women's tournaments, men's tournaments, it's all happening. There's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can check out some NBA lines, the interconference matchup in Detroit tonight. How about that? Pistons host the Spurs. Cade Cunningham and crew have been looking pretty good this season. They're favored against the Spurs. FanDuel has the Pistons laying 8.5. You know, it's not the real Spurs, but you got to play who you play. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
But Anthony Davis has a reason that he wanted to come back and play this game against the Brooklyn Nets. A lot of talk about Anthony Davis since he even went down is, will he come back? Is he going to come back? And then the talk, when it realized he could probably come back, evolved into, why is he coming back? And many of us, myself included, I think you agreed with this sentiment. Why is he coming back? There's no reason. There's not real upside for him to come back. And I still kind of think that. I still think that there really is not a ton of upside for him to come back at this point in the Dallas Mavericks season where they are with Kyrie out. There's just not a ton that the Mavs can gain here, at least big picture wise. If you're looking at the day-to-day, you're looking at the small picture with the Dallas Mavericks, you're looking at this season alone, you're looking at what the Mavericks can gain just in what they can control and what they're able to do. Anthony Davis gave a quote to Leslie McCaslin after the game in Brooklyn. It was Anthony Davis' first game back since, it's wild, Anthony Davis' first game back since his debut, the day that they had the fan protest outside the arena when he went down with an injury. Like, that is still a wild concept for me to even think about. Like, that's how much we've gone through, that is just going to be an aside that we'll just mention here in Anthony Davis' return, that day all happened.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis said this about why he wanted to return. I play basketball. This is what I get paid to do. Anytime I get a chance to come out and play, I'm going to do it. I seen where we were a man down forever, sometimes playing with 7 guys, 6, 8, and it felt like if I was 100% healthy to go play, I was going to go do that. I stressed that to my team. I stressed that to the organization as well. So tonight, we felt like I was able to play, and that's what I wanted to do. I'm not one to throw in the towel and sit down. And honestly, we talked about Anthony Davis yesterday, and I believe he can be the number one player on a championship team. It's got to be the right team built around him. But if that's going to be the Mavericks guy now, if it's going to be Anthony Davis's team now, and, you know, go over Kyrie's team, AD's team, whatever, but if it's going to be his team, then I think you need a mentality like this from your star player. And I respect it from Anthony Davis. I don't necessarily agree with it, and I kind of feel like the Mavericks felt the same way. The report that Tim McMahon said that there are people in the Mavericks organization that didn't really want him to play, and Anthony Davis did, they'd probably feel the same way. You know what? It's probably not in our best interest overall for you to do this, but if that's what you're going to do, we'd rather you have this mentality and want to play for these guys, especially the part where he mentioned we were down 7, 6, 8 guys and they were still fighting. He came back for them, and he came back because he could.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, I agree. Like, probably not for the best interest, all things considered, to bring him back. But I sort of talked about this a week or two ago when we were talking about this, where let's see where they are. If they're still in the play-in mix, like really in it, which they are, and AD's ready to play. And
literally
AD
in it as we record right now.
Yeah, they are the 10 seed currently. That's the pathetic Suns are playing currently. So we'll see what they do. But and also the spiraling Kings are only a game ahead of, I believe, of the Mavericks at this point in time.
Yeah.
So the spiraling Kings are playing the Boston Celtics tonight.
Can we not call them the baffled Kings?
I like the baffled Kings. I tried to go with the first letter of their city name.
I don't think we can use that anymore because that was from the Hallelujah song.
What, the baffled Kings?
The baffling Kings took.
No, we can go back to the baffling Kings.
Bagley overlooked.
But no, yeah, I mentioned like it's gonna get weird when AD's ready to play and wants to play. That was gonna be the situation I was always monitoring, because what if he wants to play and he goes to his team and says he wants to play and they relay that to the Mavs? What are you going to do? Are you going to say no? You know, this guy's played 3 quarters for you. You just traded for him. You just traded Luka Doncic for him. You really can't risk him being upset at you for any real reason. You can't risk him going into the summer like, man, I don't know if I want to, like, this organization. I wanted to play and they wanted to tank. That's not really what I've been about. Like, you know, I've been with the Lakers. I want a ring in the last 5 years. Like, that's not what I'm about. That leads you to some awkward stuff. So if he was ready to play 100% and the season wasn't completely and totally cooked, and what I mean by that is, like, you know, their playing chances were completely and totally cooked, then yeah, bringing him back does make some sense. And if he's healthy, if everyone says he's healthy, then okay, let's see.
They're still in it. They can still make the playoffs. Like, I know I know it's still a long shot. No 10 seed has ever made it, and the Mavs would be in position probably to do that because maybe they'd catch the baffling Kings, but I don't know. Anthony Davis, I think, is the best player in the play-in right now. I mean, it depends on what you think about Anthony Edwards. I think that Anthony Davis is a better player.
And having a great year.
And so you have a chance in all these games, and it is just a one game against each of those teams if it ends up being that. So you do have a chance to make the playoffs, to go in and do that. Anthony Davis also after the game said, you know, to Leslie McCasm, like you said, we have 12 games left. That's not true anymore. I'm not sure what Phoenix did tonight. But we were tied. I wanted to make sure I had a rhythm, make sure, you know, if we're able to make a play in, see where we go from there. He's watching this. They're all watching this. They know where they are. They know that it's not completely out of the woods yet. And honestly, that makes me like the play in a little bit more because the Mavs, if they didn't have if there wasn't a play in, the Mavs had to get to 8th, they would have shut everybody down. And now they're still playing. Now I just heard the groans of 1,000 Mavericks fans listening to this show being like, oh, they would have shut it down if there was no play in. Now I hate the play in too.
I have to be consistent with my play and disliking its current format.
I've always liked it. You're still not a fan, even though your Mavs are in it?
No, they need to do a games behind cutoff. That would be my suggestion. A games behind the 8 seed cutoff, where realistic, like, do we want the Miami Heat in the play-in tournament? No, we don't.
Well, not now.
We don't want them in it. So that would be my, like, critique of it. But yeah, I mean,
they're only what, like they're only 3.5 games out of
who.
The Heat.
The Heat are, that's just because the Eastern Conference is.
I know that's the thing. What's your cutoff? 3 games? It's like that can't be it.
Whatever the Heat are behind, that would be my cutoff right there.
You can't go on a 10-game losing streak at any point in your season.
We need like a committee, like the BCS or something used to do it, or the college football. No, it's college football playoff committee. We need that. We need to select a team. But no, yeah, I mean, I get where he's coming from. And I'm always going to respect the players for wanting to play. It's kind of what we've said. Tanking is an organizational thing. The players aren't going to do it. And you could look around the league. The pathetic Suns were like this for a while, but I think they've sort of been rejuvenated by the fact that the Mavericks are where the Mavericks are. You watch teams and you can see that everybody on the court just sort of feels it. The team feels it. They know our season's kind of done. You see the getting back on defense and transition is a little bit slower than it was maybe at the start of the season. Your rotations aren't as quick as it was. You know, you don't really close out on that 3-point shooter, even though the game plan says, hey, let's at least try to run this guy off the line. You know, all of those things. We haven't seen that with the Mavs. This hospital Mavs team is still trying really hard. And when you're AD, and yeah, you are now the leader of the team, especially with Kyrie not going to be in the picture for, probably the next calendar year or so, you want to lead by example. And I do respect that. So, yeah, I'm happy that he played. I'm happy that he came out healthy. And if he's 100% and he wants to play, I think it's hard to tell him no, is really where it's at.
And the Mavericks absolutely did not. And that's why he played in this game. And you know what? He's going to do it. And so now that we're about to talk about this game, actually, it's time. It's time for everybody. Go down the elevator. Split your brain. Because we understand why the Mavericks, why we should shut everybody down and why they should go for the tank and why they should do all that. But that's not the situation they're in. And so now they're going for this 10th seed. Anthony Davis is back, and we're going to cover this Mavericks team as it is.